So back in 2015, I did a top 5 favorite horror films of the decade so far, and then a week later, I did a top 5 worst horror films of the decade so far. You guys really dug this video, so I had the idea of what are my top 5 most underrated horror films of the decade so far. Today I am counting down my top 5 most underrated horror films of the decade. These are the films that didn't get the greatest reception, but I really like them nonetheless. Now I do have one honorable mention, and this film, I will not lie, I don't think it's a good film at all, but I feel like it's a fun movie you can watch on Halloween, and that is Annabelle. Now yeah, say what you will about this movie, and I will agree, the first half of this movie especially is absolute garbage. But the second half, especially starting in that creepy basement scene, that's when I felt this movie did pick up into a fun little roller coaster ride that I wanted in the first place. Is it as good as the first Conjuring film? Hell no. But I did have a fun time with this film nonetheless, and I'm looking forward to Annabelle 2 this year. Now with that being said, let's jump into my top 5 most underrated horror films of this decade so far.
Number 5.
Starting off the list is the first sequel on this list, and just to let you guys know, there'll only be one other sequel on the list, but that'll be later on. Kicking off the list is Insidious Chapter 2. Now the last time I checked, this film is in the 30% range on Rotten Tomatoes. Now I will say, walking to this film, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a great sequel. Now I will not lie. Is it as good as the first movie? No. Is it as scary as the first one? No. But is it still creepy? Yes, it is. I like that this film was more of an investigative thriller than it was of a horror film. Now, were there still some really scary moments in this film? Absolutely. And do I think it deserves that 30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes? Absolutely not, because that film is at least, I want to say at least 50%, because there are some people that I do understand why they do hate this film, but personally, I was one of the few that I actually dug it, and plus the fact that James Wan, I feel like, is one of the best horror filmmakers out there. I feel like James Wan understands the horror genre so well, and that's why Insidious Chapter 2 is my number 5.
Number 4.
Coming in number 4 is Scott Derrickson's Deliver Us from Evil. Now the last time I checked on this film, this has a 20%, well it's at least in that range. Wow. Now is it that bad? Not even close to that bad. And here's the thing I'll say about Deliver Us from Evil. Does it take a lot of cliches from previous horror films? Yes. Does it feel very familiar to other horror films of the past? Yes, it does. But the way that Scott Derrickson executes on that familiarity feels somewhat fresh and new. Eric Bana is great in this film, as is Joel McHale, who I loved in this film. Is this film scary? Yeah, it is. Did it scare me? Yes, it did. And as a matter of fact, it did creep me the hell out a couple of times. More than a couple of times, actually. And plus, I love the fact that the doors is a central part of this movie. I thought that was really innovative, especially that final exorcism scene. I really dug the crap out of that exorcism scene. I thought it was a really well done scene, especially how they have the doors in it. Does this film deserve the hate it got? No, it does not, but I understand why some people do not like it. Nonetheless, I feel like this film is a very underrated horror film. And plus the fact that I love my demonic possession movies, what can I say? Thanks a lot, The Exorcist. But nonetheless, I had a good time to Deliver Us from Evil, and that is why it is my number 4.
Number 3.
Coming in number 3 is one of 2 found footage horror movies on this list. And coming in number 3 is As Above, So Below. This was one of those films that, from the trailer, I thought this looked so stupid as can be. But there was one thing that did intrigue me, and that was the fact that this film took place at the Paris Catacombs, a place that is very haunted, and that if you're not with a tour guide, you're lost. I mean, you can get lost pretty easily from what I've heard in this place. And plus the fact that my cousin has visited there. I'm so jealous of you, by the way, Shannon. Just saying. The trailers look so stupid. I had a screening to it, and I went in thinking this is gonna be a stupid horror film. I went out really enjoying this movie and creeped the hell out during this movie. And it's also one of the better found footage horror movies out there. Now yes, are the characters disposable, expendable people that you just want to see get taken away? Yeah, absolutely. But nonetheless, there were some parts of this film, I'm not gonna lie, that did catch me off guard. And I know some people did have a really big problem with the ending. I thought the ending was freaking cool as can be. I don't think the film deserves this much hate, because I certainly enjoyed the crap out of it.
Number 2.
Coming in number 2 is a film that I know the moment I say the name of this film, you guys are gonna be like this. Are you serious, Austin? Okay, I'm done. Yes, come at me. I really dug Blair Witch. Come at me for saying it. I was really looking forward to this film way before it came out. When it was known as The Woods, I thought this looked scary as hell. And then when I heard it was a sequel to the Blair Witch Project, I got so excited. As a matter of fact, I actually rewatched the Blair Witch Project because I didn't give it a fair chance. I feel like when I tried to watch when I was younger, it scared the crap out of me. And I was even more excited knowing that Adam Wingard, who's one of my favorite filmmakers working today, directed it. And I know a lot of people, at least 90% of people I know especially, hate this movie. But for me personally, I dug the hell out of it. As a matter of fact, I dug it so much, I have it on Blu-ray, and I actually just rewatched this a few nights ago, and I still dig it. Now yes, is this movie as good as the original Blair Witch Project? No, not even close. But is it a worthy successor? I think it is. I will agree that the first act is a little too familiar, but afterwards, I feel like it just gets better as the film goes along, especially with that insane third act. Holy crap, that third act was terrifying. Now yes, does this movie have a bunch of false alarm jump scares? Yes it does, but I love the fact that at one point they even go like, you know what, we've had enough jump scares, we're gonna give you the scares that you wanted. I don't think that Blair Witch deserves all this hate. I feel like it's a really good horror film, especially a found footage horror film, when we don't get a lot of good ones of those, especially these days. I dug Blair Witch, and that's why it's my number 2.
It's number 1.
Alrighty guys, here we are. My most underrated horror film of the decade so far. I mentioned Blair Witch. I know you guys are still going like, what? I mentioned As Above, So Below. I mentioned Insidious Chapter 2. I mentioned Deliver Us from Evil. I know you all must be thinking, what the hell is your most underrated horror film of the decade? Well, let me tell you. It's a little film called Silent House. Before this film came out, there was one specific reason why I was interested in seeing this besides the fact that it's a horror film. Because it was advertised to be a film that was shot on one single take. And for those of you who don't know me, I have a huge admiration for films that do a lot of long continuous takes. I have a huge admiration for that. I love the premise of this film. I love the fact that it takes place all in one location. Now after seeing this film multiple times, I discovered that there's only one thing that people take away from this film, and that is the ending. Now I will agree, the ending is horrible, but everything leading up to that ending is amazing. When I watched this in theaters, this film kept me on my toes and biting my nails throughout the entire runtime before that ending. This was given an F on CinemaScore, the lowest grade a film can be given. Are you kidding me? So people say that this film is worse than all the Paranormal Activity films. It's worse than Silent Hill Revelation. I admired that this film used the one-shot gimmick take, but it used it so well. There's that claustrophobic feeling of this film. I really dug the crap out of this film. I need to buy it on Blu-ray to be honest, because I miss watching this film, talking about it right now. Now I remember walking out of this film, it wasn't quite a packed audience, but walking out, so many people were saying, worst film ever. And I wanted to say, you haven't seen a lot of movies. This was pretty damn good to me. In fact, I kind of loved it. Now, if I remember correctly, there was always this one sequence in Silent House that I remember when I first saw it, I was gripping onto my skin so much that I thought I was gonna tear some of my skin off. I was that scared by this film. To me, Silent House is the most underrated horror film of the decade. People only come away remembering the ending, but yeah, sure, while the ending is crap, everything before the ending I thought was freaking awesome. From the one-shot take gimmick from Elizabeth Olsen's amazing performance to the scares, to the suspense, everything about this movie was great. I felt like, yes, until the ending. That is why Silent House is my most underrated horror film of the decade so far. Guys, if you haven't seen this movie, I'd say give this movie a shot. It's well worth seeing. And those guys were my picks for my top 5 most underrated horror films of the decade so far. And with one honorable mention, guys, please comment down, let me know below, what were your top 5 most underrated horror films of the decade so far? If you guys enjoyed this top 5, please like and share this video. It helps me out a ton. Please subscribe to see more content from me if you want to see more content from me. And as always, until the next review or top 5 or game review, I will see you guys next time.